Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope everybody's off to a great start. Hope your workday has gone smoothly so far. 615-737-1045. That's how you can jump in as a part of our workday. We're happy to have you guys here for the next 3 hours. Lucas has just come from a Nashville SC event early this morning. Look at you out and about. What were you doing with the soccer team?
Was hanging out at Monroe Carroll Jr. Children's Hospital at Vanderbilt, the Seacrest Studios up there, because Nashville SC and Cumulus are partnering up to kick childhood cancer.
A very good cause.
Recording some interviews, some vignettes, and so some cool stuff coming. And people will hear more about this, but if you text the words kick cancer to 615-488-4401, that will have you joining the Kick Club and helping children fighting cancer in our region.
Well, that's a noble cause. Why don't you tweet that out? We'll retweet it, and people can get involved as they like, and you can tell them more about that a little later on. We got roster cuts tomorrow. We got Mike Vrabel at the podium at 11 o'clock. You'll hear from the Titans head coach. They did practice yesterday, and we do have the first round of cuts. Was anybody surprised to see Michael Badgley out on the street? For reference, on an audio medium, neither Lucas nor I are raising our hands.
No.
Liam Neeson. Been a while, bud. Does he just reemerge for football season? Or is it just, out of whim?
No rhyme or reason to when Liam pops up.
That fits very much with what the rest of the time we spend doing around here.
He does it with the same whimsical randomness that he puts out random action movies at the age of 85.
I still can't. Did you see the commercial?
Think he's actually 85.
I mean, he's probably closer to 85 than he is 65 right now. Liam Neeson is not a young man, still out here making action movies. It's one of the strangest things in the world. Do we not make new action stars? Like, is Chris Pratt like the youngest modern day action star?
Yeah.
Or somebody from the Marvel movies?
Liam Neeson's 71, by the way.
Did you see the commercial for the action movie I was talking about?
No.
It's on Netflix. It's terrible. Anyway, we have Titan stuff to talk about. Preseason, it's done. Hallelujah. And honestly, I was thinking about this morning while I was getting ready for work, and I was rewatching the first half of the game. The second half was far more interesting, but the first half was where a lot more teachable moments, let's call them, were available. And I was thinking about it this morning, like, for all the lethargy that I think comes with the preseason, this was a more interesting preseason to cover. And I know we talked about anticlimactic with the backup quarterback competition, although you'll hear from Mike Vrabel here in just a little bit. He made it seem at least like the door was still open for the potential of a Levis backup situation. We'll explain more of what we mean here in just a second. But that was kind of the experience through the preseason. It was Malik's show, right? You got a couple of possessions of Will Levis, and then for the rest of the preseason, he was unavailable. I know that was frustrating for some of you. But right now, I think that Malik Willis has acquitted himself enough to remain on the roster. Can we all agree upon that?
Yes.
That Friday night's performance started poorly. I thought the offensive line play was subpar again, and you will also hear from Mike Vrabel to that effect, because I thought he had some pretty strong words for the offensive line group, and the fact that Andre Dillard played well into the third quarter I thought was kind of telling. But for Malik Willis, and we'll flesh out the quarterback conversation more throughout the course of the day. And like I said, you can react to what you like. And if you agree, disagree with the backup quarterback situation, I think if he's not the backup quarterback, if he's not QB2, and I'm more inclined to think that he is, he's at least acquitted himself enough to be here past Tuesday afternoon at 3 p.m. Central Time. I think that while the interceptions were, one dramatically worse than the other, although the ball to Josh Wiley, and I know that Wiley as the intended target kind of is triggering for you guys this preseason. He has not performed overly well. That was not a Josh Wiley problem. That was a poorly thrown ball that Josh Wiley tried to adjust to, and then a tip drill resulted. So Vrabel specifically on the backup quarterback, I thought was, the most interesting thing to come out of the Saturday afternoon press conference. Teresa Walker asked, Mike, have you seen enough to make a decision on your backup quarterback?
I don't think so. I don't think, as it stands now with Will's availability, and, we'll get him back this week. But I thought that Malik took a big step yesterday. Unfortunately, you have the turnovers. But, again, there was a lot of cool stuff that happened after that. And I wouldn't say that we were great in front of them. I thought our receivers showed up and did a nice job most of the night. And Malik has to make some better decisions, and then we'll see where Will's at here this week.
So if he doesn't think that he's seen enough through training camp and 3 preseason games, only one where Levis was available, what more do you need to see? And that, I think he kind of, he explained a little bit. But unless Levis is able to rep these things out and have the game opportunity or the preseason opportunity, even the practice opportunity, because that's been limited for him in the last couple of weeks too, to work on the mistakes that he made in the Chicago game and to try and improve upon them. I mean, are mental reps enough to say, oh, okay, we can keep an open mind on this thing? You don't think it would be like a fluid situation throughout the course of the season? It might be. Maybe you start with Malik at the start of the season. Maybe he's more ready. Maybe by the time you get to the bye or after London when you've got the time off, maybe you feel that necessitates a change. I was just, I think that's a pretty curious answer. Not because, of anything that we think or that we said, because I don't want to speak for you, bud, but it felt kind of like both of us were in agreement that Malik Willis was quarterback 2 by default, if nothing else.
If you go into the season and Will Levis is quarterback 2, then that's just what you wanted to happen the whole way, right? Like, how can you sit here and say that Will Levis has earned that job over Malik Willis?
No, you can't. I wouldn't make that argument.
You can't at all.
I've made plenty of bad arguments. Yeah. I would not make that bad argument.
So if that is what happens on Tuesday, and by that, I suppose that would mean Malik getting cut and Will being number 2 on
because if you're just
quarterback roster.
If you're just going to name Levis the backup quarterback, do you just let Malik walk? Ugh, I don't like that at all.
If you're giving him the backup job, do you not? I mean, they probably keep 3 no matter what.
I really think so.
But there's nothing that you can point to sit here and say Will Levis earned that over Malik Willis this offseason.
So, I mean, and these things happen, by the way. Like, did we come away from last offseason feeling like Malik Willis had inherently earned the backup quarterback job over Logan Woodside? I did not feel that way. I don't want to speak for the audience. Maybe some of you remember things differently, but I remember really coming away from the preseason last year thinking oh, Malik needs a lot of work, a lot of work. And Woodside seems like he's more comfortable out there. Now, Woodside could not athletically flash the way that Malik does. And maybe the talent of Malik so much superseded what Logan Woodside was able to give you that it was worth the gamble anyway. It's not like I don't think they'd go back and make a different decision on the backup quarterback last year, but I didn't come away feeling like Malik had earned the backup job.
Last year.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about this. There was some benefit of the doubt there.
So would they do the same thing with Levis?
It would be a similar situation if Levis got that job. If come roster cut day, Will Levis is QB2 on a roster that has 2 quarterbacks.
The difference being Logan Woodside, a former 6th or 7th round pick of the Cincinnati Bengals.
There's not an investment there.
And Malik Willis is obviously a player with a lot more potential. Can you continue to refine those tools? And by the way, I think you're seeing that refinement. I think that's there. That touchdown pass, that 26-yard touchdown pass, who did he hit in the back of the end zone?
It was Kearis Jackson.
Kearis Jackson was awesome. Awesome. He had Trayshawn Harrison running underneath. He could have just taken that. Instead, he made a much more difficult throw and roped it in there. The kind of arm talent, accuracy, precision, and athletic ability that you want to see translate more, or at least more consistently. Now, maybe you could argue that he's been more consistent because while it was all encapsulated in one game, right? The roller coaster ride that is Malik.
Well, it was by far his best preseason performance.
More so with a larger sample size than was Minnesota. Like there was a definite comfort level against a defense that was playing him, I think, a little tougher from Minnesota to New England.
Were there any starters out there for the Patriots? Was there a single one?
No, he didn't play hardly anybody. To kind of judge the offense by what the Patriots were unable to do when the Titans defense was out there just mauling people.
I don't think what they were up against on defense can play any part in evaluating anything about any individuals or the offense as a whole from Saturday.
I just felt like it was a better effort from backups on the Patriots defense than I saw from a mixed and matched Minnesota group, right? They weren't letting them run the ball. They were going to make Malik try and beat them. And he struggled. He struggled in the first half and then found ways to win. Now, they obviously got some better plays in the running game. They got better blocking. Up front, Mike Vrabel was not satisfied with the effort by the offensive line. You'll hear from him on that a little later. And, of course, there's still the kicking situation that we have to talk about because as of 10:13 this morning, kids, there's not a kicker on the roster. So we can talk about that together. In fact, let's get into that coming up next. 615-737-1045 is the number. What is your level of confidence in the Titans' ability to handle the kicking situation now that Michael Badgley is out on the streets? Let's get some phone calls, shall we? We're going to get into this kicker catastrophe. I want to implement a new segment Mondays after football games. I want to do one word. I want to, you know how we make you look up things on Urban Dictionary? I would like to try and use new and creative words to describe one thing a week from a Titans game. Can we do that with the high level of production and creativity that we typically bring to the radio show? I got a good one for the kicker today.
Go ahead.
Well, not yet. Not yet. I want to wait till we can hear from him. You'll let me know when we can hear from Michael Badgley in the post-game locker room. In the meantime, let's get some phone calls. 615-737-1045. Max in Franklin, I believe, also wants to talk about some kickers.
Hello, Buck. How are you, sir?
Great.
Speaking of aging action stars that are still doing their thing, we've got one here, and he lives in Brentwood, Tennessee. His name is Mason Crosby. And if you have not checked out the Twitter from yesterday when he was on Brentwood High School's field and he kicked consecutive kicks, he lined it up at the 40, the 45, and then right on the 50-yard line. So a 60-yard kick right down the middle. His son was filming for him, so check that out. I don't know. He sold his house in Green Bay, lives here now. So literally we've got a solution for the kicker problem, who is 20 minutes from the clubhouse.
Well, thank you very much for the call, Max. Yes, we do, in fact, have confirmation that is Mason Crosby on Brentwood's high school football field out there just knocking them down, 60 yards, casual.
We talked about this last week. There's a settlement of kickers in the Middle Tennessee area.
A settlement?
Yes.
A commune?
Yes, if you will.
Who's the ringleader? Who's the Jim Jones in this
Mars
situation?
over there. I imagine Sebastian Janikowski's still hanging out over there.
Dustin Hopkins wandering around.
Yeah, just wandering around. You just go down a hall and their name is labeled on each door.
Did you say Sebastian Janikowski?
What did I say?
You meant Steven Gostkowski.
I have done that for their entire careers. I've
It's
called
fair.
Janikowski, Gostkowski, and vice versa.
They're both good kickers, or have been in years past. And they both probably, I don't think Janikowski does, but I know Gostkowski did for a hot second. I mean.
What, live here?
Yeah.
Yes.
I want you to hear this audio from Michael Badgley, because, like, we talked about this last week. It was so weird. And, he didn't have a great game, right? Like, he made 3 kicks. He missed 1. He 44, 27, and 33 were the makes. He was wide left from 39. And afterwards, after talking to Michael Badgley last, after his first day of practice, where he missed 4 kicks in practice, am I fair in saying that he was nonchalant? Nonchalant feels like a decent way to describe Michael Badgley after the the Tuesday practice after he first signed here.
Yes.
And we said, you wanted to not defend him necessarily, but it felt like you were at least trying to provide a little additional context. Maybe he just got here. Maybe he didn't sleep right. Who knows?
You don't know when he got that phone call, when he had to hop on a flight. Dismissive is how I would put it.
Dismissive.
More than nonchalant after that first practice, where he's like, it's practice. His body language was very much like, who cares? It's practice.
Okay. And so would you also describe him as dismissive after going out in a preseason game, doinking one through, missing another one from 39, and just coming in like,
They help you better than what maybe some of them.
Obviously, I think a lot of stuff speaks for itself in what I've done in regular seasons. So we'll see what they feel, and that's out of my hands.
Michael, just how do you feel about the kicking game today? And obviously, the missed one you probably want back. But what'd you see on that one that maybe was wrong?
There's no explanation. Just missed it. I wouldn't say I kicked my greatest today. Some went in, missed one, but it's pretty self-explanatory. I wish I kicked a little bit better today, but I was happy with how kickoffs went.
I don't even need to hear the rest of it. It's the, it's self-explanatory.
He's smiling the whole time.
It's the smile. It makes him seem like such a D-bag.
It's probably not going to win you over when it comes to Mike Vrabel deciding. It's not going to win Vrabel over, that attitude after a day like that.
Okay, but you know what? Like, I'm gonna go pro. I'm gonna take the unpopular position. I'm gonna go pro Badgley here. If Mike Vrabel and the Titans coaching staff doesn't give a damn about the field goal kickers, why should the field goal kickers that they bring in here? I mean, it's It is malpractice. We are talking about 12 different names. I mean, not 12 different names. 12 different names. They've had 14 kickers in the 5 years. This is going to be 6 of Vrabel here. Badgley's been here twice. Bullock was here for 2 different years. Suckup had 2 separate appearances, in 18 as a healthy kicker and then in 19 not, when everything started to spiral. They have had 12 kickers, and they have been among the worst teams by field goal percentage. If they're not going to give a damn, am I going to beat up on Michael Badgley because he doesn't either? He's probably been through it. I don't know what his experience has been in other places. And I'm not going to say that Michael Badgley shouldn't take it more seriously. Of course he should. And some people awkwardly laugh when they're uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's almost like a defense mechanism, it seems.
You remember how hard Rob Manfred got hammered when he was, they were going through labor negotiations and there might be a baseball holdout and Rob Manfred's kind of like smiling or grinning uncomfortably at the podium? Like, some people do that, so I don't want to hit him too hard. It's optically not great. And also, he underperformed. Like, you wouldn't feel confident about the Michael Badgley experience had you come out of Friday's preseason game and said, all right, that's our kicker. You don't feel good about that at all. So they're not wrong for moving on from him.
Badgley's also not exactly selling himself to any other teams that might need to bring someone in.
Sure as hell not. But, I don't know what his experience going through the tryout process for other franchises has been. But I know here that they keep finding ways to screw this thing up. The kickers that they have had on the roster have gone on to be completely competent. And Randy was fine. 85% last year. Cost-cutting measure, whatever. But you got to be damn sure that you have a plan afterwards. There's not one on the roster right now.
You know what this is starting to remind me of?
What?
Nick Saban in Alabama.
With the kickers?
For all those years.
Oh, my God.
Yes. The only thing you could point at with Alabama's football program and said they just cannot get that right, it was kicker. They were recruiting the best kickers in the country. It just didn't matter. I mean, they had short-range kickers and long-range kickers, like Joseph Bulovas, who played at Vanderbilt, transferred from Alabama, was sort of their 30-in guy. They had a 30-out guy or 40-out, whatever it might be. Just the way Nick Saban handled the kicker position, and it smoothed out a little bit over the last couple of seasons, but pretty much for the first decade plus of the dynasty Nick Saban established at Alabama, that was the one thing that you kept coming back to that they just, for whatever reason, could not figure out. This is starting to remind me of that.
So I want to do one word, right? I want to do one word after every Titans game, and now the next time we'll do it will be the regular season. Maybe we do it after the Vols in Virginia, too. That's probably not going to be much of a game. I don't know that we're going to learn too much about the University of Tennessee other than Joe Milton, but we'll reserve that. By the way, football this weekend. Exciting? Yes, of course. And we have to talk about football. You can do it if you want.
Nah, it's like 30 seconds long.
Okay. Vanderbilt and Hawaii did
Small
not
doses.
Bring that back enough in you? That was electric.
It was
Literally
fun to
electric. We can talk about Vanderbilt a little later on in the show. But the one word that I'm going to use to describe the Titans kicking situation is calamitous. All right? Involving calamity, catastrophic, or disastrous. The example that Merriam-Webster uses. Such calamitous events as fires, hurricanes, and floods, the thing that they left out of the definition is Titans kickers. Nick Suss of the Tennessean had some numbers this morning. And it's not like they're shocking when you see them because you've lived it the last 5 years. But it still does hit you right where it hurts. At Nick Suss on Twitter, since 2019, the Titans, 74 made field goals are 10 fewer than the franchise with the next fewest. 102 field goal attempts are the fewest in the NFL. 72.5% field goal percentage is worst in a league where only 2 other teams are below 80%. They are an atrocity. They are calamitous. They are a natural disaster. when they put the kicking situation out there in the last 5 years. And for the life of me, I can't figure it out. Because in theory, it's just go make the kicks. But I don't know what the process should be. I can't speak to that. Can we find like a kicking coach, like a field goal kicking coach? Can somebody explain to me what the hell these guys can do to figure it out? Didn't they have some kind of kicking specialist?
Is James Wilhoit still on the staff?
I don't think so.
Former Tennessee kicker that he coaches locally at Brentwood Academy. I'm not sure if he still does. But that was, 2 years ago that they brought him in?
I think it was last year. But yeah, I don't believe he's still on the staff. I can double check in the commercial break. Or just look at my media guide here when we get a second, maybe if we take some phone calls, 615-737-1045. But calamitous is the word that I would use.
It's just going to continue to be an issue until it's not, right? Like there's no signing I feel like the Titans could make that would wipe away this concern. It just is until it isn't. Until you have a 5, 6, 7 game sample size of consistency at kicker, it's going to be a top-of-the-line concern for Titans fans.
It is 1B to the offensive line's 1A. Outside of health. I mean, health everybody's worried about.
Yeah.
Everybody's always worried about health. But if you're talking about things that Titans fans are just generally like, I'm not feeling great about it, Bob.
Yeah.
By the way, R.I.P. Bob Barker.
As far as things that can impact your season, that can have the biggest impact on your season, you would say offensive line has to be 1A.
Offensive line 1A, kicking 1B.
Especially for the amount of close games this team gets into.
Because at least in the last 5 years, they've had decent offensive line play. Like I know last year, it's not been great the last 2 years. They've been chasing a rebuild for a while, and that's a big part of the reason why John Robinson's not here anymore. But, I mean, the field goal kicking situation, they don't got answers at all.
Do you know how many games the Titans won or lost by one score last year? Warren Sharp put this out. The teams with the most one score win or losses in 2022.
Is the Titans? Don't give me the number. Let me guess. But it is the Titans that played.
It's not the most. Kansas City was the most.
Okay. I am going to say 7.
So the stat is, wins or one-score losses. So.
Oh, wins or one-score losses.
Yeah, that number combined.
Okay, so 7 wins,
like one-score
losses.
Kansas City 17 because all their losses were one-score losses.
Okay.
And the rest were wins.
Let's say 13?
Yeah, 13.
13?
Yep. Titans are tied with the Jets, the Vikings, the Browns, the Saints, and the Packers with 13 wins or one-score losses in 2022.
I bet it looks like, if you go back through the years, I bet it looks pretty similar to that. Now, you remember this was a thing around Mike Vrabel. It was like Derrick Henry, when he gets to 100 yards, the Titans win the football game, right? It's just one of these stats that people throw out there. But Mike, for a while, his record in one-score games was, as good as anybody in football. We talked about it all the time. What are the Titans doing to make sure that they win these one-score games? Which ignores the fact that they are playing a ton of one-score games.
Well, their play style gets them into a lot of one-score games, right? Especially when they're shorthanded, like the Kansas City game. Isn't that the perfect example? You just have to make it a cagey affair where everything is nip and tuck. Like you cannot get into a shootout at Kansas City. You're going to lose. You're going to get embarrassed on prime time. And they didn't do that. They managed to send that game to overtime. They were in control of that game for spells of it. But the kicking position is so critical with that kind of playing style. It's going to come back to bite them until it's not. Like, it's a huge, huge concern until we have true, consistent, tangible evidence that it's not. And we have had none of that in how many years?
5. Since 19. So heading into 5 years.
Since Suckup.
Since Suckup's second year with Mike Vrabel. Unhealthy Suckup when it started to fall off. Because 2018, he was fine. To me, it's just such an seemingly easy fix. But again, like, Greg Joseph was here. Greg Joseph is now in Minnesota. Greg Joseph is a reliable kicker.
He's having a nice little stint in Minnesota.
Cairo Santos is a solid kicker. He's fine in Chicago. The Cody Parkey thing, we talked about, it was weird. I know he's not on a roster right now. Cody Parkey, I think, has not kicked in the league since 2021.
Yeah.
So I don't want, because I don't know how they're being handled inside the facility, I don't want to speak incorrectly. I don't want to speculate. But the results are evident in that they don't seem to have answers to a very important position on the football team. you can't accuse them of falling short on much. I will admit that. I think as a coaching staff, they are above average by any stretch of the imagination. But this stuff with the special teams has to stop.
Again, it's like the Nick Saban thing. Everything else is so good, but there's this one mysteriously mystifying piece of the roster that just can't get figured out.
Or good enough, right? Nick Saban, you can't be so much more good than another NFL team. That's probably grammatically awful, but like the NFL, you're a little closer to the rest of the pack. But I mean, you talk about the comparisons. Did you listen to Pate from last night? I had him on driving in. He was talking about and Pate is going to be in here with us this weekend or this week, right?
He'll be here Wednesday morning right before he ships off to Utah for the Florida game on Thursday.
Exciting. So we'll look forward to having it. Must be football season. We got Josh Pate coming in studio. Got a lot of fun stuff planned this week. But I was listening to Pate, and he picked Alabama to be the national champion this year. And he talked about the idea that Alabama, that has a pretty rich tradition under Nick Saban of recruiting high-level offensive line. No, it hasn't been great in the last couple of years, but they talk about this offensive line group in a way that you usually don't hear, so far above and beyond what they've had in recent years. And Pate talked about the idea of they want to get back to murder ball. It's not going to thrill you. It's not going to be high flying. It's not going to be showtime, but it's going to win. They're going to strangle you. And the Titans play a version of that in the NFL, right? They are there to choke you to death. They're going to choke you throughout the course of a football game, and they're going to hope that they choke you long enough that at the end of it, you're done. And they're gasping for air too, but they're going to hold you under until such time as they can just keep themselves alive long enough to come out of that football game. It is a strategy that is it's prone to white-knuckle behavior. And if you're going to exist that way, you can debate the merits of that in the modern-day NFL, where most offenses, especially in the AFC, have to be able to score 2 touchdowns in a quarter if they need to. But the idea that they would play that style of football without a reliable field goal kicker, it just seems like a recipe for disaster.
So we've been lamenting a lot on how much of a disaster it's been. But when you talk about solutions, there are 2 key kicking battles happening. One on the West Coast, one on the East Coast.
Yep.
That something's going to come of that. Somebody probably going to come available. One of those are the Patriots, who we just saw. Nick Folk battling with the 4th-round selection, Chad Ryland. Patriots have kept 2 kickers on the roster before. And some of the reporting I've read on that is don't be shocked if that happens here. But that is one battle to look at. And also San Francisco, Zane Gonzalez is battling it out with rookie Jake Moody.
So roster cuts are going to happen everywhere.
Yeah. Obviously, there's not a kicker on the roster right now, so the kicker's going to have to come from elsewhere. Could come from one of those 2 places.
But it's not like the injury thing, right? People are so tired of the rate of injury with this football team. But in this situation, it's not fire the training staff. It's not poor strength and conditioning program. The vast majority of the injuries that have occurred here in the last 2 seasons have been bad luck. Now, there's going to be some degree of that with the kickers, but it cannot be to this extent. This is so much more above and beyond. And the fact that they've found ways to exist without a reliable field goal kicking situation. I mean, I don't want to give them more credit than they deserve. But this is just not a feasible way to exist. Eric in Columbia is up next. Hey, Eric.
Hey, guys. How you doing this morning?
Great.
Good. My thing is, Shudak was pretty decent. He was making his field goals, except maybe that one scuffle in Chicago. But, I mean, he was doing a pretty good job. We now know who the culprit was in the field goal kicking. It was the coaches. It wasn't J-Rob. That's my opinion on that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the call. So we'll see who's available out there in the coming days. But we know that Michael Badgley is currently, and that the Titans are currently without a kicker on the roster. We'll do a little stock up, stock down from Friday's preseason finale. Mike Vrabel will speak to the media. We'll carry that press conference live for you at 11 o'clock today. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. So we got an interesting development. Titans media, friends and colleagues arriving at the facility. Mike Vrabel's press conference in 15 minutes. We'll carry it live. Interesting development that has been tweeted out by some of them. Dylan Radins on the latest printed out roster that is made available to us every day when we walk in. Dylan Radins is on the active roster. Now, there's not been an official transaction yet, but he's been previously on the physically unable to perform list. Caleb Farley is still listed there. Dylan Radins, 75, is on the, I guess, what is it, 80, 84, 85 of them now? Either way, they have to get down to 53 by 3 p.m. tomorrow. Dylan Radins, I mean, they're not going to cut him. I don't know. Let's do stock up, stock down. Oh, you're not ready? I never know if it's buffering or it just I've caught you off guard because I transitioned poorly.
No, just too many things.
Okay, I'm sorry. Stock up. Malik Willis. Stock up for Malik. Interceptions were ugly. First half was ugly. Pressure was there. It's not all his fault. There were still some bad habits that were occurring. There were moments where he looked less comfortable, and I thought he ironed a lot of it out in the second half. They were converting third downs. He was finding ways to make some pretty cool throws. We mentioned the 26-yard touchdown to Kearis Jackson late in the game. Malik Willis, stock up after a pretty rough outing in Minnesota. I'm still of the mind that they keep 3 quarterbacks, and I feel like Mike Vrabel said, what did he call it? Some pretty cool stuff out there is how he described it in the postgame with us. Sounds like the quarterback situation. If it's not a backup, for sure, that Malik Willis is at least on this roster.
Stock up Kearis Jackson. Talked about how big of a day that was for him going in. He was a guy that just needed to make a play.
Yeah.
That you thought if Friday came to an end, game's over, zero's on the clock, and Kearis Jackson has not done anything, even if it's to no fault of his own, right? If every punt had to be a fair catch, or if it was blanket coverage, or he didn't get any good throws shown his way, but he's a guy that had to make a play, and he did. His only punt return opportunity, 16-yard return. His only real opportunity in the passing game, 26-yard touchdown pass in the fourth quarter. Kearis Jackson, I feel like, made the most of his opportunities on Friday and is in as good a spot as you could ask for to make this 53-man roster, especially with the injury to Kyle Phillips.
Stock down Josh Wiley. Mike Vrabel was asked about what kind of camp he's had. I think this was on Saturday when we all got to back together Saturday at noon for a Vrabel press conference, and he said it's been all right. The Josh Wiley experience has been underwhelming. Feels like he should make the roster. He's a 5th-round draft pick. There's been nothing overwhelmingly encouraging about him thus far. Josh Wiley seems like he's trending in the wrong direction, though I still think he makes the team.
Stock down Hassan Haskins. Again.
Just unavailable?
Just not out there. Just not out there to help himself while another guy is. If Hassan Haskins is making this roster, I feel like at this point it has to be because the Titans keep 4 running backs, right? I mean, what in the world would you have to put Hassan Haskins over Julius Chestnut in a world where the Titans keep 3 running backs, Derrick Henry, Tyjae Spears, and Julius Chestnut, which is in turn a stock up. Just another night of just running hard. Julius Chestnut scores that touchdown, 30-yard catch and run to keep the chains moving on the 90-yard touchdown drive in the first quarter orchestrated by Malik. Some ball security there, right? He gets flipped over at the line of scrimmage. Ball comes out in the middle of that drive, but I just don't see how. It's unavailability, so Hassan Haskins didn't even have an opportunity to help himself, but stock down on Hassan simply because of what else is happening in that room.
So let's do it this way. They've had about even opportunities in their time on the roster. I know Haskins has not been available this preseason. Haskins played more in the regular season. Chestnut, again, played for them in the preseason. Coming out of where? Sacred Heart? Is that right?
Sacred Heart, yeah.
Who in their opportunities more embodies the kind of football player, the kind of mentality that the Tennessee Titans as a coaching staff and as a locker room tend to preach.
Yeah, it's not close. It's Julius.
It's Chestnut. So, I mean, if we came in here Wednesday morning, or if, the transaction may come out today, it may come out tomorrow, before 3 p.m., we'll see these things reported throughout the course of the next day and a half. If we got in here on Wednesday morning and Hassan Haskins was cut, that would not be a surprise to either of us.
No. And even when both healthy and on the field, who's done more for this football team?
Well, I don't think Hassan Haskins has done much of anything.
Right. That's
the
what I'm
odd
saying.
pass protection snap here or there.
Sure. I mean, Julius Chestnut, every time his number is called, has shown something. Typically, that's been in preseason or training camp, but we really can't say the same about Hassan Haskins. When have we ever been at a training camp broadcast over the course of the last month and said, nice run there by Hassan Haskins?
Well, we also famously can't see anything when we're at training camp. So maybe you and I with poor visibility should not be the judge. But yes, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. When have we ever seen somebody that actually can see the fields each and every day and what is happening? Say, Hassan Haskins had a nice day today.
It really does defeat the purpose of us being out there at all. Don't let our bosses see. We actually can't see anything at all. Do you want to do one more stock up, stock down, or you want to give a surprising play or a player who you would be surprised to see miss the cut?
Miss the cut. Surprised to at this point, Caleb Murphy.
Caleb Murphy is, I think, maybe not a consensus answer, but a really good one.
Surprised if he misses the cut.
I would
100%.
It wouldn't be unprecedented. We've talked about the smaller numbers that they tend to keep it just pure outside linebacker because he's not a down defensive lineman. It's not like Sam O. So there's some versatility issues, we'll say. But it would be pretty surprising to let a player who seems to be at least competent depth at a really, really critical position, it would be really hard to make a case to let that guy go.
I think the way his teammates talk about him, we played the audio from Arden Key, a natural-born pass rusher, 4 sacks in 3 preseason games. At this point, Caleb Murphy has only had high-level production at every single level he's been at.
Yeah, 4 sacks in 3 preseason games.
Yeah. So, yeah, hard to imagine Caleb Murphy not making the roster at this stage. Oh, I said it. Damn.
I stopped saying it.
You did.
Once you guys tell me, I'm pretty good at stopping. But like for a while there, I'll get on a run where I'll run those awful phrases into the ground.
Do you have one outside of Murphy?
Who I would be
surprised to not see them make the roster?
Miss the cut. I would be surprised to see Jaden Peavy miss the cut.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that.
I think Peavy. Naquan Jones has been unavailable. I don't know how they view Peavy versus Naquan Jones. Peavy has been available. He's been active. He's been, again, competent is the word that you're looking for the players behind your top line guys. Peavy would be one that would surprise me.
Hey, stock up.
I guess Chestnut.
Stock up on Michael Dwumfor.
He's had a solid performance in these preseason games. So, and again, it's an initial 53. It's not the roster that they'll ride into throughout the course of the season with. Mike Vrabel's press conference. That's next.
It is 11 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Titans preseason is officially over. A 23-7 win over the New England Patriots at Nissan Stadium on Friday. Malik Willis, 15 of 20 for 211 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Roster cut day in the NFL is tomorrow afternoon. Titans need to officially be down to 53 players by 3 p.m. Some cuts officially came down on Sunday, including kicker Michael Badgley. A couple of moves today. The Titans waiving tight end Alize Mack, defensive back Josh Thompson, and running back Jonathan Ward, and activating off the physically unable to perform list offensive lineman Dylan Radins. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope everybody's off to a great start to their week. Titans head coach Mike Vrabel's at the podium. I'm going to try and get some of that press conference audio for you a little later on. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to join the conversation, we'd be happy to have you at any point between now and 1 p.m. So let's go live to the head coach at Ascension St. Thomas.
And I think we really want to explore just from a mechanics standpoint, injury. I don't think that that's something that he's, trained for. He could do it in an emergency and did do it, and I was ready to do it. But I don't think we would start there.
How much, I guess, the lingering injuries make it difficult this time of year when you're trying to get down to 53, deciding how long?
Well, I think that's part of it, and seeing how guys are going to, do you have to carry them? Do you have to, are you going to put them on IR with some sort of designation and for a return? And, all part of the process of getting to 53 tomorrow afternoon.
You talked before the season about tweaking your training regimen to 2 days on and then a one-day walkthrough. What did the data through training camp show you how that went?
From a soft tissue perspective, I would say, in training camp, good. Again, I think some of our injuries, the majority of our injuries occurred during games, so we'll have to see where that goes and continue to monitor it and try to make sure that everybody's ready to go. And when things come up, address them, treat them. But I think that through training camp, I thought that we didn't feel like we had a lot of receivers or DBs with hamstring issues or things like that normally would show up with that, those position groups.
You feel like this is kind of the new formula you're going to take forward then, that this really had an impact on that?
We weren't far off, from this last year, again with the jog throughs, and if we look back, we did this similar thing last year. So I think that's, it's where we were this year. We'll see where it is next year and see where we're at. But I thought that the guys handled it pretty well as far as just how they approached the day and were able to get work in and install and go out on the field and just lower the volume.
With the offensive line, what's left between now and the season opener that you have to accomplish? As far as the right tackle position, for you to name a guy to be a starter there.
Right now, Chris is the starter. That could change. Justin's here. Dylan's getting to practice. We're going to work through, Jalen hopefully be back out there today. Keep practicing, keep competing. Things can change. It's nothing that's set in stone throughout anywhere, maybe a few positions. But, I thought they responded well yesterday to some of the corrections, conversations coming out of the game. And I think they know what we expect or what I expect, and the ability to protect the guy with the football, whether that's when we run it or whether we throw it.
Mike, how is Will Levis feeling? And are you hoping to get a full week of practice out of him?
Yeah, I anticipate Will being out there, and I think he's, for a young player, I thought he stayed really engaged in what we're doing offensively, and just had a professional approach to not being on the field, which some guys it's difficult. They lose focus because they know they're not practicing or, maybe not playing the game. I felt like just his preparation leading up to the game was lockstep. I saw him communicating with, with Malik and the coaches. So there's just a lot of maturity there. Through player's career, they're going to deal with some sort of absence and how they handle it. And so I thought it's a pretty good start for Will.
And that goes out of the building, or does that start Monday?
I think that starts after tomorrow. And there's going to be some modification. Nick will be back after, I think, 3 games into the building, allow him to lift and work out here and, be involved in meetings, just nothing with practice. So that's good, so that he can come in here, he can work out, he can treat, be at meetings, and just not have any involvement with practice or be at the games.
Do you feel like now with the opener on the horizon, like the bulk of the issues you had last year outside of injuries are fixed to your satisfaction and been addressed?
The issues? I mean, we're going to have issues every year that we're going to have to deal with.
But last year's, like that you're starting at a point where you feel like...
I mean, I think everybody does. I think that's where you go in at. You take care of the football and turn it over more. If you could tell me that's going to happen, then I'll tell you, yeah. But you practice and prepare for it. But what matters is what you do out on the game. Practice is important. I understand that. We believe that. I think your ability to make plays on the practice field lead to what you do in the game. But also, you have to go out and do it in the game. You have to block them. You have to tackle. You have to turn the football over. You have to be able to take care of it, protect the quarterback, and make contested catches and all those things.
So how do you get the confidence level that what you've done through practice translates in the game, or is that just what you see against New Orleans is what you get?
I'm not really sure. I know that we've had some really good examples of us making plays against Minnesota, us making plays in the game against Minnesota, us having, running a 4-minute operation, closing the game out. We're going to need to do that, hopefully, in 17 games. I don't think it'll be 17, but I'd like it to be. But we've also had examples of us, playing man coverage, getting off the field, affecting the quarterback. We were able to throw the ball. One thing I thought was really cool coming out of the game was that we went in with some specifics on special teams and on defense and on offense. And, we averaged 10.5 yards an attempt in the game on offense. So we were able to hit some plays down the field. We got a really cool DPI penalty that's going to go unnoticed from Chris Moore, but came back. Guy wasn't playing the ball. Those are things we coach. So I guess that translated. We talked about the net on the punt team. We worked that. We worked drills on that. And then to go and be able to show the guys after the game that here's the net. We're not following guys down maybe in the same lane like we were in Minnesota. Or after the Vice, incident with the returner, with Kyle, which is unacceptable. Early on, all our vices on the punt return were good. So those are things that I think that we can point to when we go in and say, hey, here's the focus. This is what we're concentrating on. Let's see if we can't get it done. And then when you do it, then we showed the team on, I guess, whatever it was yesterday.
Julius just has shown some production offensively. How has he done special teams-wise?
Good. I think he was one of the guys that we had talked about improving on the first kickoff against Minnesota. He was a backside 2. didn't quite necessarily squeeze tight enough, running like heck, but just didn't squeeze tight enough, and you can't bend and make the play. So that was another example we talked about improving there, and we saw that on our kickoff coverage. So, and Julius is, he's locked in, he's involved, and he's engaged in the meetings, and translating to his willingness to go down there on kickoff or be on a wing on a punt team, or off returner or returner on the kickoff return.
Jeff was talking about he and Landry teaming up against Kia and Autry for some kind of internal competition. You like when guys come up with something to ramp things up, practice situations and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that the energy, the competitiveness, I think is great. Those guys work together a lot out on the field, and the more that they can have those types of conversations and understanding on where guys are at, whether they call a game or not, or just being able to play off each other, and those instinctive players that can continue to communicate with each other. Hopefully they can help each other.
You're listening to Titans head coach Mike Vrabel ahead of roster cutdown day.
Trey's just kind of shows up, doesn't say a whole lot, does his job, competes. Getting him more comfortable down the field. We're going to have to, continue to rep those things downfield. The ability to play the football and look back and play the football and not lose ground, is something that all our DBs can continue to improve on. Just understanding the rules, that they're going to give you more leeway with contact when you're looking at playing the ball. The downside of that is sometimes when you play the ball, you can kind of lose some ground on the man, and that's the challenge, and that's stuff that we've talked about. So, there was instances against Justin Jefferson and SMB in Minnesota, and playing the football, leaning back, but also not drifting and letting 3 yards of separation go for a catch. So, I think that it's back to what Paul had asked, that there's examples, and when those things come up, we try to show them. So Trey's, that's something that he could work on, but he's one of our most competitive hold-up guys on punt return. We feel comfortable putting him in a single, and he's going to compete. So love his competitiveness. Doesn't say a whole lot, does his job, tries to use the techniques that we ask of him.
Caleb Murphy had 4 sacks in the 3 games. What more did you see from him on film, other than what kind of jumped out?
Right. That's what it is. These guys get into a pass rush situation, and he was able to affect the quarterback in multiple ways. And, ran a couple games, had a couple nice moves in Minnesota. Needs to continue to try to find a role on special teams. Would love for all our outside linebackers that don't play a bunch of snaps or heavy load to be involved in special teams. That's something that goes on pretty much everywhere.
You talked before about how difficult these couple of days can be because of the relationship you have with guys. What's your message to the guys who maybe get bad news in the next 24 hours or so, and then what's your message to the 50-30 plus you'll have here starting Wednesday?
Well, I would say that, starting with the 53, that the roster, we need to prove ourselves every day. Like this business can, nothing's guaranteed, and what the roster looks like on Wednesday is going to be different than what it looks like a week from Wednesday, and so on and so forth. That's we're always going to be looking to churn the roster. That would be my message to them, is that's not the time to relax and take a deep breath. And then unfortunately we will have to move on from some players. Do it in, whether we bring them back or we don't. Try to tell them that if they ever need something, that they've shown well for themselves, and that we would call anybody that they need me to call and help them however we can help them, and know that we could possibly bring you back if we don't bring you back on on the initial wave of the practice squad. Because when you try to make a connection with them, it is difficult, and but we all know that not everybody's going to make it. Thanks.
Thank you.
That is Titans head coach Mike Vrabel at the podium ahead of roster cutdown day. 615-737-1045 is how you can react to what you heard. We'll talk about the way that the head coach challenged his offensive line group on Friday night, coming up next. So you heard from Mike Vrabel at the podium. Titans locker room is open today. It's the first time of the offseason that the locker room is, in fact, open for media. Roster cuts coming or going to be made official as of 3 p.m. tomorrow. They'll continue to cycle through your social media feeds over the course of the next 24 hours and change. You can join the conversation at any point if you want. What did you like? What did you not like out of Friday's preseason finale? And how are you feeling about the state of the roster right now? Feels like it's in a pretty good spot. I know everybody's still kind of a little bit tight in the chest about the wide receivers. And Kyle Phillips is speaking to media right now. He's apparently frustrated, understandably so, about another injury derailing his progress. But it feels like the state of the roster is passable, if nothing else. You feel you have some degree of confidence, certainly in the defense, like what you saw out of there. We didn't get to them in stock up, stock down.
Stock up.
Yeah. Danico Autry, perpetually stock up until the end of time.
Poor depth Patriots offensive linemen on Friday.
They were having a hard time.
Just getting tossed around. And on the very first sack fumble, the speed rush off the left side of the Patriots offensive line, he absolutely torches the lineman. And then he kind of overcommits a bit and then has to peel back around to then tomahawk Bailey Zappi and get the ball out. And he played, 3 series, Danico Autry?
Yeah. He played a fair amount. I mean, Fulton was out there. Byer, Azeez Al-Shaair will look great.
Everybody was out there. I'm assuming I'm correct about this, other than Jeff or Tiertart.
Yes.
I don't think there was a single other defensive starter that did not play.
Correct. So, from that standpoint, you like where you're at with your roster right now. The one thing that is going to be a perpetual talking point all year long beyond kicker is what? Offensive line.
Yeah.
Offensive line is going to be something that frustrates you. Maybe you'll have moments where you feel better about it. Maybe there will be times when you're lulled into a false sense of security, only to have those reminders that this is more patchwork than not pop back up. So I would say Friday, given the underwhelming performance on the whole by the offensive line group as a whole, I don't even just mean the starters, even though a lot of starters did end up playing. Daniel Brunskill left, walked into the locker room. Xavier Newman then slotted in at right guard. Andre Dillard played well into the third quarter. So Mike Vrabel was asked about the work that the starting offensive line group got in all 3 preseason games, and more specifically, follow-ups about Andre Dillard's playing time. This was the head coach on Saturday.
Well, I mean, I think that group, as a whole, we have to start better, and we need to, make sure that we're improving. And whether we game plan for what New England was in, that doesn't matter. We need to go out and play better and use our rules and block better and finish better. So I would say that entire group has to have a big week.
With Andre Dillard, your decision to give him extensive time, how much of that had to do with the fact that he hasn't played a lot in the last year or so?
Oh, quite a bit. There's certainly things that we want to see coming out of each game, or that I would like to see, and so we give him opportunities to do those things. And also, like you mentioned, having played limited snaps last year, 47 or however many snaps that he played, certainly part of it.
Did you see what you wanted to see?
At times, again, that entire group, there's just too much inconsistency.
Zillow Rentals.
No.
What happened?
An ad.
On Twitter?
On YouTube. Horrendous. Horrendous timing on that.
What, you prefer it just be the music, the orchestra that comes thundering in from nowhere after a press conference?
We were playing it right off of the YouTube that was posted by the Titans.
So it wasn't even a pop-up this time. It just went into it was just that point in the press conference.
Just gave me no warning.
Time for an ad. So Mike Vrabel, saying they got to have a great week this week. I just don't think there's ever going to be a point this season where I feel good about the Titans' offensive line situation. So, I like to try and make sure that I'm being fair in my assessments. I think more often than not, and if I'm not, most times Lucas will rein me in. So I was texting some people around the league this weekend saying basically the generic question that I sent to a bunch of my friends. How many NFL teams would you say actually feel confident in their offensive line groups? Now, if I asked you that question, Lucas, how many would you say? If you had to think about, and I know you don't know specific details.
Like a number out of 32.
Out of 32, how many teams would you say feel confident in what it is that they're putting out in front of their quarterbacks this year?
Maybe half.
Probably, I'd say more than half. And the feedback that I got was, anywhere between 17 and 20. Probably feel confident. How many actually have good offensive lines as opposed to just being confident in the group preseason? The answer to that is probably closer to half, 10. Half of the original number. Those who are confident and those who actually have a group that is worth being confident in. I'd say 10 teams this year have good offensive line groups. Not just starters, but positional depth. The Titans are not, I would not put them in that 1 to 10 range. I would not put them in that 16 to 20 range right now. I just kind of feel like they're going to be in a below average group by the time we get to the end of the season. Now, they can prove me wrong. They can make me eat my words. They can come out there and look gangbusters against the Saints and have 2,000 yards rushing for Derrick Henry. All of this could be nonsense. But based on their preseason, I don't think I'm wrong in saying that this group has earned zero benefit of the doubt from anybody. I don't think they've done much to alleviate your concerns. Aaron Brewer probably has done some to make you feel better about the starting center position.
I think the same goes for Peter Skoronski.
I would agree with that, but I didn't feel bad about Skoronski. In fact, Skoronski is the only thing that I generally felt good about on their offensive line. Brewer, I think, looks like a natural center. And the technical prowess and just general strength. He's small, not to do the Mighty Mouse thing to Aaron Brewer, but he is small but mighty. He is incredibly strong in the lower body. He is incredibly technically sound in the run game. That's going to help alleviate a lot of the concerns that you have about his size. There'll be moments where he gets tossed, right? He's 265 pounds, 275 pounds. There's going to be moments where he gets physically moved by somebody who is bigger and stronger. But for the most part, I felt all right about Brewer. So if I come into this and say, preseason did not show me enough to change my opinion, to move me off my general skepticism about the offensive line, I think that probably speaks for most people.
Yeah, I think there's probably more optimism and confidence in run blocking just because of the degree of success they were able to have, understanding I know it's preseason, but in the last couple of weeks, they mauled the Vikings up front in the run game.
They did.
And they were able to run the ball effectively against the Patriots.
Yes.
On Friday. It feels like
in the second half.
Yeah. It feels like that's going to be a strength of this offensive line.
One would hope.
But pass blocking is kind of the question mark when you have not faced hardly any starters in the preseason when it comes to opposing front sevens. And the reports coming out of Minnesota weren't great against that pass rush. They were sending numbers, right? Brian Flores. But I wish we could have gotten to see joint practices with the Patriots. Would have really liked to see this offensive line against that Patriots front.
Because what we know is in the preseason, they have had a fair amount of success. You could probably say, all right, average looking group in the preseason.
The Titans offensive line, you're saying?
Against the starters in Minnesota, they looked about like they looked against the Titans starting defense. Now, Lucas is correct. Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator there, he has basically been hired to fix their pressure problems, and he's sending dudes from all over the place.
You want pressure?
We got it.
I'll give you pressure.
It's like, who's the Giants DC? Longtime Ravens.
Wink
Martindale. Wink Martindale getting Isaiah Simmons and just having that freakish of a player to do what he wants with and deploy him anywhere across the front as a rusher.
He's going to heat you up.
Yeah, he was heating the holy hell out of Aaron Rodgers on Saturday afternoon. Those are the kind of things, and so they'll have to adapt. They'll have to adjust. I mean, the Saints are a talented defensive front. I know, Cam Jordan's getting up there in years, but he can still give you problems. They are going to see defenses that cause them problems throughout the course of the year, how they adapt, how they can hide deficiencies with the offensive line. Can they implement more of a quick game to keep the ball, moving, to not have Ryan Tannehill sit in the pocket for these slower developing. It doesn't all have to be play action, even though you succeed in play action. It can be quick play action, bang play action, right? You can hit the back foot, let the ball go, and get it out. So ways to mitigate the pressure that this offensive line group is going to be under. Because we know that we feel objectively bad about their depth.
Yeah.
Objectively bad. They don't have a swing tackle. Raden's is going to be on the 53-man roster. If they're activating him today, he's going to be there.
Which is that surprising? I mean, late December ACL tear?
Mid-December ACL tear. What was that, like December
18th.
Okay. I mean, maybe they think he can, because if they put him on reserve PUP, right, he would have to miss 4 games of the regular season. If they Monty Riced him like they did last year with Monty, he would have to miss 4 regular season games. So perhaps, by October, they feel okay about it after a mid-December ACL tear. Wouldn't you say that's pretty standard for recovery? Like, not everybody's Jeff, right, where they tear it in February and you're out there October 20th.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was in his rookie season. That lines up with...
Not 9-ish months.
That lines up, I think. Now, whether he's right or not, hopefully he won't have to play. And I saw some people bringing up the idea of, well, Dylan Radins is available. He can start at right tackle. And I mean, haven't you seen enough? Or hasn't the coaching staff told you enough with him as a right tackle experiment that it's not meant to be? That they moved him into guard, that he ended up playing half a game or maybe a couple of drives at left tackle, and that was the best that he looked. And when they finally moved on from Dennis Daly, he tears his ACL just when he's starting to look like he might be able to give you something. So it's kind of like an Andre Dillard situation where he's only a left tackle. You can't put him anywhere else on the offensive line. That was the biggest issue in Philadelphia. They tried him at right. They couldn't figure it out with Lane Johnson missing some time there. And that's one of the best offensive line coaches in the sport in Jeff Stoutland. So Radins, how he factors into all this, it's telling to me that he's activated because it means he's not going on reserve PUP. So sooner rather than later for Dylan Radins. Jalen Duncan doesn't seem like he's a swing tackle right now. That if it's going to happen, it's a work in progress. Elsewhere on the roster, I mean, who is that player? That Zach Johnson was that, but he was technically listed as a guard, and he had to get the hell out of here.
You just can't get into a spot on the offensive line where you need NPF to come in and save things after the suspension is up.
Well, I mean, George Fant would have been the answer to that, right? Where George Fant is replacement level. I mean, I know he missed a lot of time with the Jets. He had a lot of injuries, so there's nothing that says that George Fant won't have that happen again. But George Fant is kind of like your replacement level starting tackle in football, and they passed. I mean, they offered him veteran minimum, and he passed.
Yeah, Hubbard is that guy for them now.
Hubbard is that guy for them.
Who Vrabel basically called the starter right now at right tackle.
Right now. Now, I mean, Chris Hubbard has not been, we have not talked a ton about Chris Hubbard. I went back and watched it. I watched the second half of Minnesota. Obviously, he didn't play beyond the first 3 drives. But the second half in Minnesota, looking at the offensive line group, and then the first half this morning again against the Patriots, and the offense, it's just below average. Chris Hubbard is a below average starting right tackle. And that's the best that you're going to be able to do right now, especially for veteran minimum.
But I feel like they have to figure it out with this group because people are going to look at Nicholas Petit-Frere as sort of the safety net after week 6. I feel like we saw almost nothing from him in training camp.
Oh, in preseason?
In preseason games, going up against 3s. Like, I really feel like there was a lot to be desired from Nicholas Petit-Frere.
Oh, but he wasn't good last year. He was not good. He was covered up. The I don't want to say stench. Stench feels harsh, but the stench of NPF's poor play or underwhelming play was masked by an even stronger stench of Dennis Daly. and the left tackle play that was happening there. I thought I was very underwhelmed with NPF. Now, we've talked about this all the time. I'm going to keep the same energy for NPF as I do for all rookie offensive linemen. It's really, really hard. It's really hard, and some of the best offensive linemen in football right now, some of the guys who are getting paid right now, struggled mightily as rookies, struggled publicly in bigger markets where there was a lot more scrutiny on them. NPF, TBD. But there was nothing there last year that said to me that that guy needs to be their starting right tackle definitively.
Though he probably would have been.
This coming into this year? Sure. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that he's good. Like that, a third-round pick on NPF does not mean that they have found their right tackle. Just because he started right out of the gate doesn't mean they found their right tackle.
Like if they find something in these first 6 weeks, that could be it for the season, even after he's back off his suspension.
That was George Fant's argument. He said, I mean, in so many words, I can't quote him specifically. I wasn't physically in the meeting when they offered him the deal. But based on my understanding, Fant's representation argued, hey, he thinks he can be your right tackle. He deserves to be compensated as such. Your current situation at right tackle is not so good that you can afford to pay my guy less just because you think that you can find a deal there. And this guy is coming back after 6 weeks. Fant is probably going to play for the Texans. Fant is going to get paid like a replacement level starter. That wasn't the situation that they were offering him here. And now, it's Chris Hubbard kind of, is it Chris Hubbard or bust? Feels that way.
At right tackle?
In the immediate.
Yeah.
Coming up next, college football. Vandy with a win that should have probably been bigger, but a lot of interesting stuff coming out of week 0. You saw the Heisman race start to develop. USC, did you watch how much you had let's talk about college football coming up next. Week 0 in the books, week 1 on the way. It's a wonderful time to be alive, and we'll talk about it here on 104.5 The Zone. College football results from week 0. Good to have it back in our lives. Josh Pate's going to be in studio with us on Wednesday. Get us ready for an exciting week 1. Tennessee going to be just down the road from where the radio studios are. Nissan Stadium hosting the Virginia Cavaliers. I still cannot for the life of me understand an 11 a.m. kickoff for that. If you're going to do the neutral site thing, at least give people an opportunity to enjoy it. 11 a.m. for the Vols in Nashville. Just, I don't know. I hate that. I know it's not a big matchup. I know that Tennessee's a 27.5 point favorites right now?
Last we checked, it might be bigger than that.
So maybe it's a stinky game, put it in an early window. But that's just, I hate that.
I mean, the week 1 slate in general is not great. There's not a lot that really grabs you. The best game is LSU Florida State, and that's on Sunday night.
Sure.
I mean, College Game Day is going to North Carolina, South Carolina for the Duke's Mayo Classic.
Yeah, don't love that
College
either.
Game Day week 1. So I'm intrigued by that game, but for that to be your marquee matchup week 1, it's not a fantastic slate.
So nobody's going to accuse Vanderbilt of being marquee. In fact, their stadium would very much indicate that they're not. Let's talk about the football game before we talk about the stadium situation. I think that's only fair because Vanderbilt did win. They're 1-0 on the season, to their credit, even though Hawaii made it a hell of a lot closer than they had any business making it. 35-28 was the final score. You had kick returns for touchdowns. You had a performance by the Hawaii offense against the Vanderbilt secondary that I think is pretty shameful for an SEC defense to get out there. We know, and Lucas and I talked about this, I think, yesterday when we were putting the show together, felt pretty good about Vanderbilt up front relative to expectations for Vanderbilt heading into 2023. Lucas, you had expressed concerns with their secondary prior to seeing Hawaii kind of run it up I guess not run it, but throw it up and down on them.
Yeah, Hawaii wasn't able to run the ball. Neither team was able to run the ball. 39 rush yards for Vanderbilt, a concern. I don't think they have a clear-cut RB1. Patrick Smith, their lead rusher, with 30 yards. A lot of those numbers, A.J. Swan sack numbers, minus 26, certainly contributes to that. Swan was a positive, I thought, in moments. I think, he's a guy that you can hang your hat on as a starting SEC caliber quarterback. But, yeah, secondary, a lot to be desired. Hawaii making it a game late. London Humphreys with that 32-yard touchdown catch. It looked like Vanderbilt was off and running. 35-14 at that point in the fourth quarter. London Humphreys, by the way, freshman, local guy out of CPA, done plenty of his high school football games at Christ Presbyterian Academy. But, yeah, that defense is going to have to improve if Vanderbilt wants to get to 6-6. Darren Agu was out on Saturday. Going to play a big role for them in that pass rushing rotation. I talked about him, the guy, former Notre Dame commit, had offers from all sorts of Power 5 programs, came to Vanderbilt. He did not play on Saturday, but yeah, I think giving up 351 pass yards and 3 passing touchdowns to Hawaii, big concern.
They just didn't get any pressure. Like, it's not just that the secondary, I felt worse about the secondary because they couldn't pressure Hawaii's quarterback. They had 3 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. Hawaii had 3 sacks and 9 tackles for loss against Vanderbilt. These programs, and I don't want to discredit Hawaii potentially making progress and holding their own in a situation that was less than ideal. You got lightning delays. Of course, you're traveling a really, really far distance, playing in a different time zone. You have the lightning delays. You have the weather. You have the fact that they didn't have a visiting team locker room.
Hawaii should be proud of what they did on Saturday. Coming all that way, obviously, the terrible situation that's happening in Hawaii right now. Down 21 in the fourth quarter. They just kept playing. That game was a blowout last year. I mean,
yes.
That game, Mike Wright ran all over Hawaii in 2022. So for them to come and put up a fight in that way and nearly come back, falling 1 possession short, yeah, Hawaii should come away feeling good, I think, after week 0.
Well, it's kind of the inverse of the Titans' offensive line situation. All 5 Vanderbilt starters were returning this season. I think that's kind of disappointing given what they were unable to produce or unable to protect So we'll keep an eye on Vanderbilt's situation. The idea of them being bowl eligible this year under Clark Lee, how realistic it is. We kind of went through and looked at their schedule and tried to make the case, not necessarily tried to make the case for it, but seeing if there was a case to be made for Vanderbilt this year. And I would think that Saturday's performance was not overwhelming, was not encouraging if you're looking for a bowl-eligible Vanderbilt team this year.
They have to get better up front. They have to get healthy in the front seven defensively. They've got playmakers. They've got guys whose ball they can put the ball in their hands to go make plays. London Humphreys, Jaden McGowan had the exciting kick return. He's going to be one of their best freshmen, one of the fastest players in the SEC, and Will Shepard coming back to lead that wide receiver corps. Like, there are guys that Vanderbilt can put into space to make an impact in the passing game, but they got to figure out how to protect A.J. Swan and run the football and get to the quarterback, because I don't have high hopes for that secondary.
So I gave up on my Notre Dame Fighting Irish very early into that game. 21-0 is when I turned it off against Navy. It ended up being 42-3. Can you explain to me, maybe there's something, because I tuned back in at the end of the game, and they're doing the fight song with the Irish fans at the end, where they go, as many universities do, they go over their corner of the end zone, they're singing with their fan base, and Navy is just awkwardly standing behind the Notre Dame football players as they're doing this. Like, as they're singing the fight song with the Notre Dame fans. They're just standing there, the entire team.
I did not see that.
And then they walk away afterwards. It's like, what is happening here?
That was your biggest takeaway?
Well, yeah, that and Sam Hartman looked great.
Hartman looked awesome.
Right?
Saturday was a fun little way too early start to the Heisman race with Sam Hartman and Caleb Williams' performances. But I'm seeing people talk about Notre Dame as a college football playoff contender with what Sam Hartman did on Saturday. And it's been a long time since Vanderbilt has had a quarterback.
Notre Dame,
has had a quarterback that can look like that can do those things to put him into that conversation of both Heisman and playoff contender.
He had 4 touchdowns on 23 total passing attempts. Against Navy, what's Coach Mack say? Keep your powder dry.
There were plenty of moments just like this last season where Notre Dame did not do this.
Sure.
Right? They lost to Marshall. They stunk it up against Navy. They stunk it up against a terrible Stanford team.
Quarterback makes a huge difference.
This was as optimistic a start to the season as Notre Dame fans could have had. For USC fans, I would not say the same thing.
Yeah, USC. That was not that's not a standard that you want to set for yourself. I know people are going to look at the final score and say, what do you mean 56-28? If you watch that game, you understand what I mean. Now, Caleb Williams, I thought, was fine. Like, it's not – I think a lot of people have really high expectations for Caleb Williams, rightfully so. He's the defending Heisman Trophy winner. He's a very talented quarterback. He plays in an offense that should very much lend itself to his success. But that San Jose State was even able to put together 28 points on them, I think, is disappointing.
It was a 1-2 possession game for the majority of the game.
Yeah.
They can't stop – and they were rotating a ton. I think USC's trying to figure out what it has with certain groups on defense, but there's still no excuse for me. It feels like it's just going to be the same USC. Same USC.
But that's not the same USC. It's the same Lincoln Riley.
Yeah.
And I don't understand how I don't understand how there is a pattern of behavior there, or not pattern of behavior, or a track record of what happens to defensive units that play under Lincoln Riley. But the fact that it's kind of like Titans' kicking situation. It's malpractice.
Well, the personnel has only gotten better there. They hit it in the portal hard. Bear Alexander, a perfect example. Defensive lineman out of Georgia, wants to go play on the West Coast and play for USC. I don't think it's going to be a massive personnel issue this year. Like, this should be the year that Lincoln Riley finally looks in the mirror and realizes, no, this is a philosophical identity issue. With Alex Grinch as the defensive coordinator, this has followed Grinch around almost everywhere he's been. And it's just going to be the same. More of the same from USC. They're going to put up 50 points. They're going to give up 30. And they're not going to be a national championship contender because of it. And I'm looking forward to seeing when that finally crystallizes for Lincoln Riley. I'm sure their fan base is too.
Mike Vrabel, He has not made his mind up on a backup quarterback situation. Did Malik Willis earn the job, in your opinion? 615-737-1045. We'll talk about it next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The Titans preseason is over. A 23-7 win over the New England Patriots wrapped it up at Nissan Stadium on Friday. Malik Willis, 15 of 20 for 211 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, including this 26-yard touchdown to Kieris Jackson in the fourth quarter.
Willis rolling to his right, firing downfield in the end zone. Touchdown! Titans! Yes, sir! Kieris Jackson for a big 6.
Mike Keith and Coach Mack on the Titans radio call. Roster cut day in the NFL is tomorrow afternoon. The Titans have to officially be down to 53 players by 3 p.m. Tuesday. Some cuts officially coming down Sunday and today, including kicker Michael Badgley. Titans making another transaction, activating offensive lineman Dylan Radins from the physically unable to perform list. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour on this Monday. Things are moving quickly. Last opportunities for you to jump in with us before we wrap it up at 1 o'clock. Hand it off to Blaine and Mickey. 615-737-1045 is the number. Jump in at any point if you would like. Quarterbacks. A lot of you guys invested, interested in the quarterback situation. Was set up to be a bit dramatic. Ended up not being. Will Levis unavailable, missing some time, not playing in 2 of the 3 preseason games. Gives you a bigger sample size to evaluate Malik Willis with, but did you like what you saw? Did you feel good enough about what it is that you saw from a second-year player who you know has a lot of work still yet to do? To hear the head coach tell it, there's not been enough information as of Saturday afternoon when he met with us to name a backup quarterback yet. I want you to hear from Mike Vrabel when we asked him this question, when Teresa Walker asked him this question, whether he's seen enough yet or not. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. But Mike Vrabel, being non-committal is probably the best way to put it, leaves the door open for continued competition throughout the course of this week. There's nothing that says they have to name a backup quarterback anytime soon. I guess, you would rather than do it sooner rather than later, but it's not like a starting quarterback situation where you have to know. It might be Malik for New Orleans. It might be Levis for San Diego, Los Angeles at home when the Titans open with the Chargers at Nissan Stadium. This was Mike Vrabel on the quarterback situation Saturday with us.
I don't think so. I don't think, as it stands now with Will's availability, and, we'll get him back this week. But I thought that Malik took a big step yesterday. Unfortunately, you have the turnovers. But, again, there was a lot of cool stuff that happened after that. And I wouldn't say that we were great in front of them. I thought our receivers showed up and did a nice job most of the night. And Malik has to make some better decisions, and then we'll see where Will's at here this week.
So Mike Vrabel later said in the press conference that we carried at 11 o'clock that he expects Will Levis to be available today and available this week at practice. Levis not getting game reps to work through the issues that he showed that he had in Chicago, whether it's a feel for pressure, whether it's accuracy, timing issues. Vrabel, you heard, mention the offensive line group in front of him. It was, I think, pretty underwhelming as an experience on the whole throughout 4 quarters of the preseason finale. But who should be the backup quarterback for at least, let's say, week 1? The answer to me is obviously Malik. Levis may end up being a better option to back up Ryan Tannehill by the time we get later in the season. But Malik Willis has game reps right now, is coming off a performance that was more good than it was bad, even if you felt pretty awful about the interceptions or fumbling or the pressure that got to him, whether it's things that you still want to see him iron out at a greater rate. That's largely done for the time being. Now he's scout team quarterback is the extent of his reps, especially once they cut the roster down and there's just not enough players to have a first, second, and third team offense. Malik is more ready to contribute to this football team than is Will Levis in the immediate. There's no question to me that Malik needs to be the backup quarterback for week 1. And there may not be a question for them. Why Mike's non-committal on it? I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't want to. I mean, there's a degree of it is probably you don't want to have either of them check out. Like just to kind of keep them mentally engaged, mentally focused, challenging them to continue to compete in an off week where you know there's not a game, where there's not opportunities. All right, treat practice like you would this preseason game. You didn't get the preseason game, Will. Go out there and try and still win it. This isn't case closed yet. And as he said, as Vrabel said, there's a lot of different positions that are like that. Backup quarterback is included among them. So they want to keep them competing. They want to keep them engaged as much as humanly possible.
Well, Vrabel had already established a pecking order, right?
Like after the draft, it was
the night of the draft.
The night of the draft, Tannehill 1, Malik is 2, and Levis will be the 3.
So we've been proceeding through the offseason with that in mind, right? That pecking order. There's just nothing has happened for us to think that would change at this point, right?
Nothing on the field, on the practice field, and obviously not available in preseason games, Levis for 2 of the 3. There was nothing from an on-field standpoint that indicates Will Levis is more prepared to be the backup quarterback than is Malik Willis. In the meeting rooms, I don't know. I'm not in there with them. You hear that they've both made positive progress. Levis, the only way that Levis is going to improve upon the places where he needs that work is to play, and he hasn't gotten that yet. He may be identifying things correctly when they throw it up on the projector. They still use projectors, right? It's probably not. It's probably a little more high tech than a projector. Is it a smart board? I don't know. I haven't been in one of these. I haven't been in a classroom setting in a very long time. But I'm assuming that he's progressing just fine from a recognition standpoint. They're watching tape with him. They're probably going over the things that he needed to be better about in the meeting rooms. And, until he gets time to actually get out there and execute it. And by the way, they're practicing today. They will have practice today. They'll conclude at about 1:45. So you should start to see updates coming out of that. Do you think it's interesting? Well, I guess they did waive a handful. They waived about 10 players before practicing the last couple of days. So it's not that it's always weird to me, the idea that they would have guys go through a practice then just afterwards to cut them. But maybe the competition at some roster spots is that close. Nobody's going to argue that Levis, unless you just want him to be, right? The way that we talked about to open the show. Unless, as a coaching staff, you came in predetermined that Will Levis is going to be your backup quarterback this year, and they end up making Will Levis the backup quarterback, so the competition, quote unquote, was all for naught. Like, that's fine, I guess.
I don't think that's what's happening.
I don't think so either. That doesn't strike me as a very Vrabel thing to do. So in the absence of that, there's no justification. There's no real argument unless you just want him to be the backup quarterback for Will Levis to have beaten out Malik Willis for that job.
Yeah, and the injury on top of all of that. Like Will Levis, we don't know if he's 100%, right? You want to name that your QB2? Go into the season with 2 quarterbacks on the 53, one of which is coming off a quad injury that held him out for the back half or the majority of the preseason. It's hard to envision any scenario, right, where Will Levis is suddenly QB2 for the Titans, especially with Malik's performance on Friday and the way he finished the game. He was 14 of 15 in his last 15 pass attempts.
JR says, was Levis really too hurt? Well, I'm I mean, if the training staff is saying, yeah, it's probably not worth it, then he's probably too hurt. I don't like whatever conspiracy you're trying. This is what I'm saying. Don't work too hard to talk yourself into a situation that you would rather see happen. Don't talk yourself into circles trying to find justification for why Will Levis hasn't been the backup quarterback, other than he's not available to win that job right now, or at least has not been available. It sounds like he's going to be available again this week. Don't treat it as definitive in the same way that I talk about. This is what frustrates me, that people have to operate in these extremes. Bert apparently, in a rare moment, Bert said that he took up for me this morning on the morning show, because there was a commenter last night on Primetime, and I can't remember the name, but it was right out of the gate. As soon as we started the stream, dude got in there and said, loved what I saw from Malik Willis on Friday night, which is fine. That can be an opinion. And immediately went into, in the same sentence, it looks like we've got our next McNair. And I just, my head exploded. I'm just like, why would you do that? Why would you why would you do that to yourself? Why would you do that to Malik Willis? Like, what on earth is the logic behind saying, and probably somebody who went from saying that this dude couldn't play quarterback in the league to half of a preseason game, all of a sudden he's the next McNair. We don't need to operate in these extremes. So in the same way that I'm saying Malik Willis, week 1, backup quarterback, it doesn't have to stay the same all year long. Don't operate in extremes. It's an initial 53-man roster. That roster is going to continue to change every damn week, sometimes multiple times a week, depending on injuries, all kind of other things, guys being unavailable at certain times. It's an initial roster. This is the initial backup quarterback situation. Treat it that way, if you want to, just to keep yourself from operating in these extremes. Don't make him the next McNair. Don't say he's the future of the franchise. For 2023, in week 1, Malik Willis is your best backup quarterback option. Anything beyond that, I think, is a useless conversation to have.
Eric on the F&M Bank chat says Kevin Dyson compared him to McNair also. So Dyson has talked about Malik having some similarities that remind him of Steve.
That's fine.
Mainly, and we've talked about this, Malik's general demeanor, the not too high, not too low. He's a really consistent guy in the huddle with the media, sort of that laid-back, even-keeled demeanor of a quarterback. That's what McNair was. And so Dyson has talked about it in that context, but not in the context of, well, we did it, everybody.
Yeah.
The next Steve McNair made it here out of Liberty.
And maybe that was the person's point and they just didn't articulate it well, right? Like, that's possible.
Well, you just need to stop getting fired up from random bot stream comments from God knows who.
Well, it's the same. We talk about this a lot. We love the people who exist in our video chats. It's a lot of the same people in both shows, which tells me that you all are consuming this stuff 24/7, which seems, 1, deeply unhealthy. 2, we're grateful for it. But yeah, a lot of familiar faces. And I can't help it if the first comment that I see when I sit down to do the show is something comparing Malik Willis to Steve McNair. I can't help it. That's only human. You can see the steam coming out of my ears as soon as we start the show. Coming up next, let's talk about the good and the bad from Malik Willis. We'll walk through the performance. We'll talk about the places where we felt he made progress. We'll talk about some mistakes that he doesn't seem to be learning from. We can take your reaction to the backup quarterback situation as well. 615-737-1045 is the number. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Jump in here if you want to. 615-737-1045. We're talking backup quarterbacks. Did Malik Willis earn the job for at least the first week? Is he the initial backup quarterback? The initial 53-man roster, the initial backup quarterback. You don't have to assign long-term value to these things. Whatever you need to do to get by week 1 and then to get by week 2. That's what we're talking about here for the time being. Has Malik Willis earned that backup spot for week 1 at New Orleans? 615-737-1045 is how you join. Let's start with Eric in Nashville.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So, look, my take is Malik should start. I think he's done enough. He knows the playbook. He just has to do what he's told.
I'm sorry, you said, wait, Eric, you said start?
Oh, I'm sorry, back up.
Okay.
But I think he's done enough, but he still has to do what he's told. And that means finding open receivers without throwing interceptions. And I know I'm excited to see how Tim Kelly develops Ryan Tannehill, but if we had to have a backup, I would say draft another one. What do you guys think about that?
Just keep doing it. I mean, I got what I wanted this year. I got Will Levis, which I knew was going to be, polarizing, shall we say. If you don't feel like the two are sufficient, sure. I mean, I guess, but I'm not concerned about next year's draft. And the idea of developing Ryan Tannehill is a finished product. The offensive coordinator is not coming here to develop Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill at, year 11 or 12 is a developed player. The question becomes, can Tim Kelly better maximize said developed players' developed skill set? So maybe if you're talking about formative years, this is more valuable for Malik Willis and Will Levis with Tim Kelly, but those reps are about to all go to Ryan Tannehill. So I'm kind of at the point where developmentally, the two of them are really about as far along as they're going to get. With Malik, the interceptions are, you got to study each of them, and you've got to look at some of the throws that he's passing up, right? I think most people would say when Malik Willis it was 95 yards rushing that he ended up with. He ended up with 91 because he had a couple of kneel downs
in Minnesota
at the end of the game, but it was 95 yards rushing for Malik Willis. And that is a number that most people are going to look at and say that's a positive. But when you go back and look at what he was passing up to rush for 91 yards, yes, there are positives to be found in the gains, but the ways that the moments, the opportunities that he's passing up within their passing concepts are negatives against his performance there. Now, I think you saw some of that in the first half. Mike Vrabel mentioned slow starts for the offensive line have to be eliminated. That was one of the things that he cited right out the gate when we asked him about Malik Willis. Thought they weren't great in front of him. Thought the wide receivers did some good stuff to help him out. Malik Willis is making progress. It's, again, the question that we keep coming back to, is the progress that he's made sufficient? Right now, it's as good as you're going to get. JC is in Franklin. What's up, JC?
Ain't nothing to it. I got a comment and then two questions. Starting with the comment. As a Titans fan with some football knowledge, I don't know who my number 2 is because I haven't seen enough of the second one, which is Levis, to make a comparison. So I really don't know. I'm not at practice. I don't know what they've seen in practice. Mm-hmm. This is going to lead into my second question. But my first question is this for you, Buck. The DeLorean parks outside your house and Doc Brown? I think it's Doc Brown, gets out and says, I got a tape. He had the tape of this year's preseason and last year's Malik Willis. And you're drafting the 2021 or 2022? Can't remember. Draft class. Do you take Malik Willis in the third round again, knowing what you know now? in the situation the Titans were in. And then my second question is there things that can happen with the roster spots in terms of practice squad, or what's the eligibility of a Malik Willis or a Will Levis? That part I don't really know.
Okay. So first question, would I draft Malik in the third round again, knowing what I know now? Sure. Third round pick on a quarterback's a flyer. If he works out, great. If he doesn't, okay. It's a high value position with not overwhelmingly high value draft capital in a year where they had 2 third-round picks, and whether they expected him to fall to, I think it was 86 is where they got him.
That's where they selected him.
So, yeah, like third-round picks on quarterbacks are lottery tickets.
Again, the Malik Willis experience is going exactly like it was supposed to go.
I would, again, argue that he's ahead of schedule.
He's going into year 2. We've seen improvement from year 1 to year 2. In year 1, he was absolutely nowhere near ready to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. He wasn't supposed to be.
Yep.
It is going according to plans, I might even say. Like, this is how this was always going to go.
I'm, again, arguing ahead of schedule. He played earlier than he had to. He benefited from it. You're seeing the dividends of that now. Whether you find that sufficient or not, that's up to you. Well, it's up to them. But, yeah, I continue to think, like, Desmond Ridder as a second-round pick is a bit of a flyer. Will Levis as a second-round pick is more of a flyer than he's not, even if you traded up to get him.
Wasn't Ridder a third? Didn't they get Ridder before the Titans got Malik? Like, shortly before?
I thought he was a second-round pick. But you might.
He was third-round pick, 74. So he was 12 picks before.
He was a third-round pick.
Ritter was.
Okay.
He was 12 picks before Malik.
So we went an entire round in the NFL draft without them taking a quarterback.
Yeah, it was Pickett at 20, the whole second round, and then Ritter at 74.
Oh, yeah. I totally. Ritter or Malik. It's like Dak Prescott as a fourth. Is it going to turn into Dak Prescott? You have no idea. But if it does, you're sitting pretty, right? And then what the second question? Oh, about roster eligibility, practice squad eligibility. If Levis is not getting cut, so let's remove Levis from this hypothetical. If Malik was to get cut, he would have to clear waivers. If he cleared waivers, they could put him back on the practice squad. I would assume that he would not make it through the waiver claim process. So the viability of cutting him, the risks outweigh the rewards.
Yeah, so someone would probably snap him up.
Gil is in California up next. Hey, Gil.
Hello?
Hey.
Hey, what's going on, bud? My thing is, I would say that I don't think that neither one of the backups are capable of being backups. So with Malik Willis being John Robinson's pick, I think they're going to go with 2 quarterbacks and go with Will Levis. And if Tannehill goes down, I think they'll look into getting a veteran quarterback. And I think Malik Willis, he has gotten better, but I don't think that is good enough. And I still don't think that he's able to read defenses and throw to a pocket, out the pocket. And if you give a starting defense a chance to game plan for him, I don't think they'll rush the quarterback. They'll make him throw. And I don't trust him throwing the ball farther than 5 or 10 yards. Maybe once or twice, but I don't see it consistent. And I think he'll move on, and later on his career will be better. But I don't think at this point of where the Titans are at, they have time to wait for him.
Well, let me just ask you this then.
Go ahead.
Does it matter if Ryan Tannehill goes down? Like, does it matter?
Yes, it matters, but I would think they would go get a veteran like they got Dobbs or somebody else who can actually come in.
Right, but what I'm saying is you lost those 2 Dobbs games. You see what I'm saying? Like, if in your scenario Ryan Tannehill goes down and they're without Malik Willis and they're without Will Levis, they're not in a beneficial situation. Your season is all but done already if that starting quarterback is not available. You see what I'm saying?
What I'm saying is, Buck, is that if both of them are the same, I'd rather go with trust Ron and how they did in San Francisco and just go with Will Levis and hope that he can be better and learn to read defense. But I don't think Malik Willis is just ready. And with that being said, to me, it's no reason to keep 3 quarterbacks. That's just taking up a roster spot if both of them are the same. I just will put trust in Ryan Carthon that Will Levis will end up being what we drafted him to be. And that's his pick. I mean, I'd rather him go with his pick than John Robinson's pick.
Thanks for the call. Okay. So I see what you're saying. I wouldn't do that.
I don't really see your approach either. If your starter goes down, season's kind of lost anyway, so what does it matter?
Yeah, season's done. I mean, if Ryan Tannehill's done, this is a godforsaken football team.
Sure. When Dak went down last year, Cooper Rush comes in.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying they're not Cooper Rush.
Jimmy G goes down, and then next thing you know, Brock Purdy's in there, and I'm just saying, like nobody in that building's going to take that approach.
No.
So why would we take that approach?
Because that's the more realistic approach. They have to get through. They have to get through a season. Realistically, they're going to have to put out the best product that they can, and they'll have to coach up those players. But I mean, I am not making the argument that I think they have a viable backup quarterback situation, such that Cooper Rush is a viable backup quarterback situation. Neither of them is Cooper Rush. Neither of them is Brock Purdy, even though none of us could have seen Brock Purdy coming. Even San Francisco didn't. He was the last pick in the draft. Let's not be ridiculous.
They would find a way to maximize their chance to win in the event that Ryan Tannehill goes down. Right? It's not, well, season's lost. Let's just throw him out there and let him gun it and see what we got. Like,
no,
that's not
that is how I would view it. That's not what they're like.
That's not real life, right? Like, that's not how coaches are going to operate.
Right. Okay, that's a good distinction by you. I am saying that is how I'm going to view that season. The coaching staff is going to try and maximize the abilities of whomever they have at their disposal because their jobs depend on it. The players, they owe it to the players. They're not going to, and especially it's not a tanking. Tanking is not an option here. I guess my point was, if that happens, their season is lost from my standpoint, and anything that I would want to see would be the two young quarterbacks playing as much as humanly possible, because then it is in fact about 2024. Then it actually becomes about next season and how much further can you get them and how much more ready can you get them. I would prefer to have both of them at my disposal. And the argument is you're just taking up a roster spot. Is a backup quarterback, is a third option at quarterback not more valuable than whoever the 53rd player on your roster is? Like, who is the 53rd player on the roster right now? If you throw me a name,
yeah, like keeping a fourth running back, like keeping a
is Julius Chestnut, is Kevin Rader, maybe you could argue
the fourth running back could be Hassan Haskins, right?
Yeah, okay.
Would Haskins? You desperately don't want to keep three quarterbacks so that Hassan Haskins can stay on the roster.
Your wide receiver room is not necessarily stable. So maybe you're arguing keep another wide receiver over a quarterback. Maybe you're arguing Caleb Murphy over a quarterback. The quarterback is more valuable. Worth noting on Murphy, by the way, Bert had me pick a guy who I thought might be a surprise miss on the roster, miss the cut. Caleb Murphy keeps kind of sitting in the back of my head that way because I think he's only played 5 or 7 special team snaps all preseason. I don't think that's a good sign.
Yeah, would also be surprised if he gets cut.
I would be surprised. I think he's going to end up on the outs, and that I know that's going to frustrate a lot of people.
You would be surprised, but you think it's going to happen? I don't know. I don't understand what you're saying about Caleb Murphy.
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not saying this correctly or clearly. Caleb Murphy is a good enough player. I would keep him on the roster. Caleb Murphy does not play special teams. Your fourth outside linebacker has to. I think that's why he's going to be off the roster.
It also might be why they keep an extra outside linebacker.
And maybe they do that instead of a third quarterback. See? Roster math. Fun. Let's go to David in Nashville next. Hey, Dave.
Hey, how's it going?
Great.
I was just calling to let these people know, man, that Malik Willis is a second-year quarterback. John Elway, Peyton Manning, all the other guys that started their careers as quarterbacks struggled their first year through. He's only in his second year. His progression is coming good. He's doing a lot better. He's reading better, and he's staying in the pocket a little longer than he has. So, let's give him a chance. He'll be good. And I think you're right. You need to keep a third quarterback instead of having a 53rd player that means nothing.
I appreciate the call, David. I don't like when people cite John Elway or Peyton Manning, or even when they do Tom Brady for Brock Purdy. as like the modern day Tom Brady experience. I see what you're saying. Rookies struggle should be the way that we look at this. Rookies struggle, especially rookies coming into a situation like Malik Willis had. It's not that fans are not patient with him. The NFL demands that they are not overwhelmingly patient with these guys. You produce or you move on. It's already happened to Willis. His organization has told him, your clock has already started. Will Levis's presence on the roster is as clear and obvious a sign of that as any that you could find.
The clock starts earlier on quarterbacks now than it did in the days of John Elway.
Yes, John Elway and Malik Willis are not comparable experiences. Peyton Manning, even as a first-round pick, even though he had all ungodly interception numbers his first couple of years, right? It took Peyton about 3. Quarterbacks don't get that kind of leash. Look no further than Trey Lance.
Well, because offenses are being built around quarterbacks, not the other way around. The Colts offense is being built around Anthony Richardson.
Are you watching Winning Time? The Lakers, Showtime Lakers?
Yeah, is the new season out?
Yeah, new season.
Oh, I haven't seen the new season.
I think it's like 2 or 3 episodes in the new season.
I did see the first season.
There's no spoilers, but like there's a really good sequence where Paul Westhead, who's the Lakers coach at the time, has a certain system that he wants to run. And Magic Johnson, best point guard we've ever seen, probably doesn't fit within the system. And the whole thing is the organization siding with the coach over and over and over again. Maybe that's how it existed in the 80s and when John Elway played quarterback. Today, that's not the case. The coaches don't get that much time. You got to figure out how to make these dudes ready now.
And for Malik, it is a longer process because he is being molded to the system, right? Titans didn't draft Malik Willis and then start building an offense like the one he ran at Liberty around him. He is having to mold to the system, not the other way around. So it's going to take longer for Malik Willis.
I almost don't even think it's about him learning how to mold to a system.
Yeah.
That there is a system in a way that it really wasn't at Liberty. We'll get to more phone calls coming up next. 615-737-1045. We got some updates. There's a Vols depth chart out, given that there's a game this coming Saturday. Last call for phone calls, and Blaine and Mickey coming up next. So we got kicker news. Kicker trades in the NFL now are relevant to all of us. Cameron Dicker, according to Ian Rappaport, won the Chargers kicking job. Dustin Hopkins is being traded to the Cleveland Browns for a 7th-round pick. Now, Cleveland has a kicker on their roster. His name is Cade York. One would imagine that this is bad news for Cade York. These are the kind of things that you need to keep track of now that waivers are starting to come into your life, and kicking is, of course, at a premium. Get to some phone calls quickly before Lucas gives us an update on the Vols depth chart. How about Richard in Winchester?
Hey, guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I think Malik stays 60-40, and I think a lot of it has to do with Will Levis's injuries. He wasn't allowed to play that much during the preseason. I also have a question. We started 7-3 last year, and then we lost 7 straight. Was Tannehill start in all 7 games? Did Tannehill not play in any of those 7 games, and we just went down because of him?
I mean, it wasn't just because he played in a handful of those games. He played in what, 4 of those final 7. Missed some time, got hurt against the Chargers.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was the Chargers game his last game? Because he got hurt and came back in, but then did not play again the following week.
He had the surgery after the L.A. game. So his last game out there, he missed a couple of games, remember, in the middle of the season.
But the initial injury happened against Indianapolis, right? The home game against the Colts?
October.
So the initial injury happened before that Packers game.
So
it just got worse.
Right. They won the Houston game. They lost the Chiefs game. They split those 2 games that he was out. Then he was a part of the 7-game losing streak, and then once Malik was in there, they didn't have a chance. And then once Dobbs got in there, you could argue that the Jags game was a bad call and all these things. Kenny in Clarksville.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I really don't think there's a quarterback controversy or competition. I think we keep 3. If Tannehill goes 0-16, he's gone next year because he's out of contract. If he goes 16-0 and wins the Super Bowl, we can't afford to keep him. So really the battle will begin between Willis and Levis next year to see who takes the franchise from there. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Oh, my God. That was the smartest call we've had all day, and he was short, succinct, to the point. We love to see it. What can you tell me about the Vols depth chart ahead of their opener on Saturday?
A lot of oars. 11 to be specific as it pertains to actual starting jobs where there is not a definitive starter on the depth chart, especially on the offensive line, where center and right guard has Cooper Mays and Javonte Spraggins, respectively. The right tackle battle appears to be between Jeremiah Crawford and Dane Davis. The left tackle position appears to be between the Miami transfer, John Campbell, and the Florida transfer, Gerald Mincey. And left guard as well. There's 3 names in the mix there. An update, though, Josh Heupel would not give an update on Cooper Mays, the center who is injured at the moment. His status a little bit in doubt for Saturday against UVA. It appears as though it would be either Ollie Lane or Dane Davis to step into that role as the starting center if Mays cannot go on Saturday per this official depth chart. Looking around defensively, both corner spots look to be up for grabs. And the thing that caught my eye is the kick return spot. Says D. Williams or Cameron Seldon, the freshman running back. D. Williams is entrenched in there on the depth chart as the starting punt returner. But that caught my eye because maybe that is where we see Cam Seldon make his impact. A lot of hype around him. Big, 6'2", 220-pound freshman. Got all the Debo comparisons, right? Just in the way that Tennessee may use him, a guy who can go out wide, who can step into the backfield and can make an impact in the return game. It'll be interesting to see if that impact initially from Seldon comes in the kick return game specifically. And then at receiver, no surprise that Brew McCoy is a starter. Ramel Keaton listed as a starter with the 3rd spot split between either Squirrel White or Dante Thornton, the Oregon transfer.
But don't tell Adam Schefter that they put oars on
A lot of oars. And a few things I'm sure that will be ironed out on Saturday, specific with the offensive line. I wonder if that is something that they tried to really grow into the season with in a couple of spots.
It's okay in college, less in the pros. Polls, please.
Oh, Nelly, this is Keith Jackson talking about college football. It's time to stop the count. The polls have closed and the granddaddy of them all has been tallied. With your poll update, Paul Nelly talking about Buck Rising show producer and daily correspondent Lucas Panziga.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. Which Titans player stock is up after the preseason win over the Patriots? John says Kearis Jackson. Karen says Mason Kinsey, who are kind of competing for the same spot.
Yeah, if I had to pick one of the two to make it, it'd be Kearis Jackson. I think Kinsey can get through on waivers, and they can keep him on the practice squad, which is just the perfect place to keep him.
John says Colton Dow, who had a pretty nice night on Friday. Made some plays. Nobody expects him to make this 53, I don't think.
No.
Probably practice squad, and that's fine. But you got to give Colton Dow credit. He did show up in some moments on Friday.
2 catches for 49 yards. He was the leading receiver. It was cool to talk to him afterwards because you could tell he was really hype about playing at home. He pointed out where he and his family had sat in the stadium when they go to Titans games because, of course, he's grown up in Lebanon. Mike Vrabel said he was a little shaky at the start, little nerves, and then ironed that out throughout the course of the preseason game. I don't think he's going to make the roster, though.
Whose stock is down after the preseason win against the Patriots? John says the guys who didn't play, Hassan Haskins and Monty Rice.
Yeah, man. Who do you think is most likely to be cut between the two of them? I'm leaning Haskins, but I don't think Monty Rice is safe at all.
I don't know if either of them make the roster.
Damn. Were they both the same draft class? No, Monty was the year before.
Yeah, Monty was before. Titan Travis says Racey McMath, stock down.
Stock down Racey McMath. I agree with that.
What did you learn about Vanderbilt football in the season opening win over Hawaii? Andrew, who has created this No Context 1045 The Zone quotes Twitter account.
What?
Yeah, he's just tweeting out. It is kind of funny. There's just random no context quotes from throughout the course of the day.
Oh, surely people don't care about that, do they?
From any one show. But he said secondary is atrocious. They got speed at wide receiver, running back, and kick returner.
Oh, secondary. Yeah, I mean, what does Coach Mack say? You can never have enough pass rushers. You can never have enough corners. And certainly that's echoed in the Titans coaching staff. But I think, their 1 through 5 corner group you feel okay about, right? That doesn't include Caleb Farley. Murphy Bunting, I know, had the penalty. Mike Vrabel said it was a coachable or a teachable moment. But for the most part, I think you're on solid footing as long as you've got that pass rush.
What's your solution for the Titans at kicker? Big Joe says, go get a Nashville SC player. John says whoever the Saints or Pats cut. And Ryan says at the moment, Mason Crosby. If the Patriots cut Nick Folk, be fine with that too.
Cade York's probably cheaper. Sounds like he might be on his way out in Cleveland. Situations to monitor.
Didn't have a great rookie year, Cade York.
Well, Bullock had a fine year last year, and they cut him anyway. So, like I said, until they start to tell me that they care about the kicking situation, I'm just going to treat it the exact same way they do. Shoulder shrug. Those the polls?
Those the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. Blaine and Mickey coming up next. I'll talk to you tonight on Primetime.